guys, Caitlin here. I am back with another RightStart Math review. So if you have followed me for a while, you know that we have used RightStart Math since my oldest was in kindergarten, and he just wrapped up what would be considered his 4th grade year, and we just wrapped up RightStart Math Level E. And so every year after we finish our year, I like to do a review video and just share my thoughts about it, like a flip through, that kind of thing. And so here we are with Level E. Now, I know this is my favorite RightStart Math level so far, which surprised me because I really thought as we got higher in RightStart, it would get harder and I would maybe like it less, but that has not been the case. I loved Level E, and I'm not 100% sure why. I can't exactly pinpoint it, but I have a couple of things that I think contributed to that. One is that it's just like, it was easier for my son. It just really seemed to click this year. And so like last year, Level D, which is really heavily focused on multiplication, was difficult for him. We had to do some work over the summer to practice multiplication facts and get him, like RightStart doesn't feel like you have to have those memorized, but I wanted to have those memorized, wanted him to have them memorized. So we worked on that over the summer last year. And so I don't know if it was that or what, he just was getting it easier, and so the lessons were less of a struggle. So that was part of it, but also just like seeing it all come together in the big picture was really cool. So I'm learning to trust the process with RightStart, even though sometimes from the beginning, like, I'm not sure, why are we learning this, or like, where are we going with this? But in Level E, you just really start to see it all like connecting. You're like, oh, this is why we've been talking about this in the previous levels. And it was just cool. There's also several really cool lessons that were like just light bulb moments or really fun. And I'll share some of those, at the end as I'm sharing more about the different lessons. But it was just my favorite lesson so far. And I was just like, this is so cool. It was just a great program. Anyway, so I really wasn't sure because, like I said, Level D was kind of difficult for us, and I wasn't sure about Level E because I thought, okay, multiplication was hard, and now here we go with division and multi-digit multiplication. But I don't know, it just clicked with him and things went great. So some of the topics that are covered, this is not an exhaustive list. I'm sure you can look up the actual list of lessons online if you want to see every single lesson, because there are 140 of them. There's a lot. So it's not an exhaustive list, but here's some of the ones. So rounding large numbers, fractions, we've been doing fractions since kindergarten with RightStart Math, but keep adding on to it. So fractions larger than 1, comparing fractions, shading objects into certain fractions, that kind of thing. It talks about remainders, like kind of right off the bat. It was very early in the lesson. They start with division. I mean, division has been touched on in previous levels, but they started with division and remainders, which I don't know, like, I was kind of like, remainders seems like an advanced topic. You should learn how to divide first. But, as with RightStart, sometimes they do things in a different order than what I expect, and it works out well. So it goes into remainders. If you divide something, it doesn't divide evenly, what do you have? So that's kind of starts off at the beginning. So 2-digit multiplication. So in RightStart Level D, previous year, 3rd grade-ish, we do a lot of multiplication, and it's all single digit, just tons and tons of multiplication. You start off Level E with single digit, and at the beginning, there's always a lot of review lessons and kind of like starts out easier. Anyway, lesson 59 is when they introduce 2-digit multiplication. And then not too long after that, in lesson 68, they introduced something called short division, which was really cool. It's like long division but short. I know that sounds crazy. Instead of when you're dividing like a larger number, the way I was taught with long division, you would like divide, and then you would write the number, and then you would subtract, and then you would divide, and you have like long division, right? And you've got all this stuff written down there. They don't teach it that way. They teach it so that you divide, and there's not all this writing at the bottom. It's just all just right there in a line. And I'm sure that sounds crazy. I should have made an example to show you, but anyway, that's how they teach it. Now, there is a side note in the book that says that long division will be taught in the next level, Level F, but it's not taught in Level E. They just do short division, and it's just really cool. And I wish that was taught all the time. It was really awesome. And then lesson 69, they introduce what's called multivides, and multivides are these really long problems where you do like several multiplication problems that build on each other, and then you turn around and you do several division problems of that same number dividing back down. And that is like a big part of RightStart. So 140 lessons, lesson 70 would be the midpoint, like roughly around Christmas if you do it in like a normal school year. So you've got short division, two-digit multiplication in 59, short division in 68, multivides in 69. And you're like, that's a lot of big concepts, just bam, 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 right to back to back to back. And that's okay, because the whole second half of the year, you're going to be doing multivides nearly every day, which practice that multi-digit multiplication and that short division over and over and over again every single day. That's one of the things that I do kind of have a beef about with RightStart sometimes, is they don't let you know, should you have this mastered before you move on? Are you going to continue seeing this? And I've dealt with this in past levels, and you probably have too, where I feel like, oh no, we don't know this super well, and then it's part of it's my fault for not looking ahead, but also part of it, I was like, it would be really nice if somehow they would indicate that that you're going to keep getting this over and over and over again, and by the end it will be mastered. So I'm telling you, if you're watching this before starting, when you hit the multi-digit multiplication and the short division and the multivides, and you're like, maybe we don't know how to do this, it is okay. Keep going with those multivides every single day, and it's going to be so much easier by the end of the year. Okay, some other topics is like tenths and hundredths. They introduce decimals and percentages. You talk about decimals in money and decimals in fuel prices and decimals in measurement. There's lots of fractions and percentages in this year. Lots of geometry too. There's triangles, polygons, angles, area. There's some stuff about prime numbers. So it just like with all the levels, it touches on a whole bunch of different things, but it kind of goes deeper into the multiplication and the division and those geometry concepts and the fractions and the percentages is what I'd say are kind of like the main topics for this year. So that is kind of like an overview of the year. Some of my favorite lessons, there was a lesson where we talked about writing checks, and that was applicable. My kids see me write checks for homeschool stuff and to our church and that kind of thing. And so, I kind of took some time from the lesson and taught them how to actually write a check. There was a lesson about magic squares, which if you are in classical conversations and you have been to practicum already this year, then you may know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't been to practicum yet, I'm going to make you sound really smart at practicum. So a magic square is just a square where the sum of each row, column, and diagonal is the same number. And there were 3 lessons about that maybe, and we did that for several days. It's kind of like a puzzle. But anyway, at CC, at our practicum, the focus was on math, and there was this picture we were supposed to look at, and there is a magic square in the picture. And I was probably if I'd done this last summer before we had done level E, I would have not even noticed it maybe. But because we'd done level E, I saw it and I was like, I bet that's a magic square. And I started adding them up, the different rows and columns. And I was like, it's a magic square. So I thought that was cool. There was a lesson about percentages in geography. So you have a map and what percentage of the states touch this Great Lake? What percentage of the states start with this letter? What percentage of the states? So it was all percentages, but my kids love geography. And this past cycle was CC Cycle 3, which has a focus on the United States and the U.S. geography. So it just kind of all tied together, which was nice. Now, if you're not in CC or it's not CC Cycle 3 when you do it, that's totally fine. I just thought it was a cool lesson and just made it extra fun for my kids because we were in the middle of that. There's one where you draw the Olympic rings and, you learn how to draw circles and concentric circles. And we are big Olympics freaks. We love the Olympics. It's a huge ordeal in our house every year when it rolls around. And so that was really fun because, we got to draw that, and it was just something that was not just drawing random circles on paper. There was a lesson, one of the enrichment lessons, which guiltily I don't always do because sometimes they take a lot of time, but we did them this year, and it was a Mobius strip, which is the paper that, you can follow it all the way on both sides of the circle kind of. And so like I had seen a Mobius strip before, but my son had never seen it before. And he was just like, what? This is amazing. So that was a really fun one. Also, if you're in CC, sorry if you're not in CC, because I have a lot of things to say about it this year. Lesson 130 is, this is not just related to CC, but you discover the area of a triangle. Okay, this is why this relates to CC though. We have, if you're not familiar with classical conversations, the kids learn memory work every single year, and they don't necessarily know why, like it's not applied to anything yet. Just from 4 years old, they start learning these math formulas and other random memory work. Well, one of the things is the area of a triangle. My kids have been singing this geometry song since they were 4, and the area of a triangle. So they know the formula for the area of a triangle because of CC. But this lesson like you do all this discovery stuff, and we do this, and my son was like, oh, that's why the area of a triangle is, because you figure it out on your own. And it was like one of those lessons where you're just like, this is so cool. It was a cool lesson. So if you're not in CC, you'll still think it's a cool lesson. But if you are in CC and your kids already know the area of a triangle, this is going to like solidify it and like help them realize why that's the area of a triangle. So I just like had all the happy hearts whenever that happened, and stars everywhere, like I was just really excited. So anyway, that is just kind of an overview of level E. If you are in RightStart and you finished D, you're not sure about E, I say keep going. It is good. It just is good. I know at those higher levels, people kind of sometimes will start leaving some of the higher levels and go to different math curriculums, but I definitely, I can't say past E because we haven't gotten there yet, but definitely through E, it's so good. Keep going. So I'm going to flip the camera around and show you just like a quick flip through so you can kind of see some examples of stuff. And then that's it. But anyway, yeah, let's look at that. Alrighty here. So if you're familiar with RightStart, you know all this stuff at the beginning, but here's your table of contents. You can also see this online on the website so that you can see all the lessons listed out. And then of course, the beginning is lots of review, as they always do, to make sure you know how to use abacus, how to use a math balance, reviewing, that short multiplication table, which we spent a ton of time on previous year. And then here's kind of our flip through. Remainders, check numbers, which we learned, I think we learned that in the previous year, right? I think that was a review. Anyway, so this one was fun with the millions. We, did this in the corner of our house and visualized a million. That was fun. Here's your large numbers and rounding them. There's some shortcuts for adding and subtracting. So kind of more review of subtracting by doing all these different shortcuts. There's the magic squares I was talking about, that if you're in CC and you go to practicum this year, you'll see that there. If you don't go to practicum or you're not in CC, they're still cool. It's a fun puzzle. More subtraction, review. We got some drawing pretty early on in the year, lesson 38. Then you don't see it a whole lot more until later in the year, kind of like RightStart always does, where there's a lot of geometry, either like, I feel like it's either right around Christmas time, around lesson 70, or at the end of the year. But anyway. Fractions. There's prime numbers. I went over that for a bit. That was kind of difficult for us. The prime numbers part was remainders. There's short division. So that's what I was talking about earlier. Here's your short division. So you divide 4,023 divided by 3. There's no writing underneath it like the way I was taught traditionally, and you probably were too. So anyway, that's really cool. And then multivides. These are multivides. You're going to see them just about every day. But you start, you multiply here, you get the answer, then you multiply that by something else. And then you get an answer and you multiply that by something else. And so on. And then you get to your final answer. multiplying, and now you start dividing it, and divide until you get to a small number. My recommendation with these, unless your kid is just whizzing through them, is have them stop and you check each one, because what happened to us several times is he would do a bunch of multiplying, or it was usually in the multiplying when he would get stuck. He'd do a bunch of multiplying, and then we get down there and he'd miss like towards the top. They get harder as you go through the year, but and then that messed up everything, and we'd have to go back, and he'd be so frustrated. So we kind of started where I would check after every 1 or 2 problems to prevent that from happening. So I recommend that if your child is prone to make mistakes with stuff like that. Let's see here. What else do I want to show you? So here's an example of how your warm-up is a multivide, and this sometimes takes a really long time. And some days we would do just the multivide for the day, and then we would do the actual lesson another day. Or sometimes we do a multivide from one day and a multivide from the next day. Like this would be like day 1, day 2, and then do both lessons for day 3 to kind of not make it take like twice as long. But these sometimes take a really long time, and so that's okay if you need to slow down and just work through a multivide, and they do get faster. So my decimals and fractions, here's the one where we were like, this has to do with writing a check. And so I pulled out my checkbook and showed how do you write a check. So that was a fun, like, real life lesson there. Order of operations with the calculator. If you've watched any of my review videos from the past, you know that I always skip the calculator lessons. I do not like them. I do not find them to be necessary, but in level E, we did start using the calculator. We used it for order of operations, dollars and cents on the calculator, and it was, for these lessons, I felt like it was good. It was good practice for him to use the calculator. He was able to do the lesson quicker and get the concept and not get bogged down with having to do the calculations. And so in level E, finally, I feel like, yes, use your calculator. So that's my personal opinion. Anyway, so decimals, fuel prices, percentages, lots of percentage problems. Here's the geography one, and in the appendix is a map of the United States so that you can do these problems. Let's see here. Got triangles, you start working on that, polygons, angles, area, lots of area. Oh yeah, line plots, did that. There's the Mobius strip lesson, that was fun. There you go, that's a flip through of it.